Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of Tea With Tay Pod, the only podcast that brings the tea as it is hot. And speaking about tea, this episode is proudly sponsored by my fave, Lipton. My guest today is a talented TV presenter and podcaster who's based in the UK and doing amazing work. Her name is Madame Joyce. Please a round of applause for my guest, all the way from the UK.
Yeah.
And IGGB in the building. Period. My friend, how are you?
I'm amazing.
I've been waiting for you to come back. Let's do this episode.
Honestly, it's actually been long overdue, and I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah.
I actually can't believe I'm in Nigeria at the moment. I'm loving being called IJGB girl. I'm
Yeah.
loving it. I'm happy to be back. What feels like home, essentially.
It's home. I love it. I love the British accent. Like, I think that, I have to take classes because it just makes me feel like, some extra
Je ne sais quoi.
to it, you know?
As you're learning, as you're trying to be British, I'm trying to be Yoruba. I've been learning to speak Yoruba because I understand fluently. But the mistake I made growing up is that when my mum used to speak Yoruba to me, I used to answer back in English.
Is it?
Yeah, so I can hear conversations, but when it's time to start speaking it, I just start freezing and glitching and stuff. I'm like,
Are you serious?
yeah, it's
because
really bad.
you give me the energy of somebody who understands Yoruba a lot.
I know. I think because of my personality is so Nigerian. People think that I can speak it and I'm with it.
Yeah.
But I'm not really with it. It's very fake. I'm fake. I'm very
Aren't
fake.
we all
I'm
fake?
very, very fake. But yeah, I think being here has really made me want to know the language more and want to speak the language more.
But this is your first time in Nigeria, right?
It is my first
Why?
time. Do you know what it is? Obviously, when you grow up in poverty and that, when you grow up broke, there's no money for plane tickets.
Yeah.
And one is that there was no money for plane ticket, and two, my mum was very persistent on us going with her. I feel like there was a little bit of a fear that if we go to Nigeria, it's dangerous, it's a bad place, you shouldn't go there by yourself, go with her. So I think growing up, that fear was instilled in me that, oh my God, if I go here, like I'm going to be kidnapped or something, which again is it happens, but it's not as intense as my mum has made it to be. So I finally took the courage to this year say, listen, it's me and Nigeria this winter on God. So I'm here.
This summer for us, right? It's hot in Nigeria. It's Hamatan season for us.
So hot. I'm loving it.
But
loving it.
How are you finding Nigeria?
Do you know what? I'm so in love with Nigeria. And I feel like when I first stepped off the plane, even though it was my first time here, there was such a sense of familiarity.
Like it's home.
It was like, this is home, this is me. And I feel like it's crazy because I've never been here, but being here and being around the people from here and the girlies and the podcast, I'm so understanding my identity so much more. And I didn't understand the brassness and the loudness and the audacity is literally just running through everybody's veins here.
Which is something that you always had, but you couldn't understand it with the space that you were in. Now that you're here, it feels like you're one of us, because everybody's like you.
Oh God, and it's weird because in London, obviously everybody is quite conservative and dainty and, push up lip.
Yeah.
And I just come into them like, what's good? And I feel like I really struggled with my identity because I didn't feel like I was feminine enough. I didn't feel like I was quiet enough. But coming here and seeing so many women like me has just made me feel a bit less crazy, which is good.
That's amazing. Because, speaking about identity, I need to know what your childhood was like growing up and things that informed this Joyce that we're seeing today. Like, because you grew up with Nigerian parents, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about growing up.
Yeah, so obviously I grew up in between Dublin, Ireland, and then London.
Right.
And I grew up in a single parent home with just my mum, my three sisters, and my younger brother. And I moved around a lot. So I was like, because of reasons that I, to be honest, don't know, I moved to so many different schools. And I was always the new girl. So I'd be in a school for like 3 months, 4 months. And then my mom would say, oh yeah, we are going somewhere. We are going to move to this. And she would just pack up and leave.
Where was she moving?
So different places around London. So I moved to North London for a bit. Then I moved to East London, Hackney. Then from there, I moved to South London to stay with my auntie. Then I moved back to North London. Then I moved to Luton, which is outside of outside of London. Then I moved to Bedford. Then I moved back. Like, I've been around.
You don't try.
Yeah, I've tried. So I feel like there was definitely a lack of stability in my childhood. And with then having to make friends and be in different schools, it was really hard for me to try and build solid friendships like that,
Yeah.
last very long.
Yeah.
And I think me coming into new schools and having to be the new girl, I had to really show up because I wanted to be liked. I really had this thing where it's like, now I'm in a school in the middle of the semester.
Yeah.
Everybody's built their friendships. I need people to like me. If not, I'm going to be on the playground for a long time. So
Mm.
it formulated this coping mechanism of coming into spaces and performing. Oh my God, hi guys, hi guys, hi guys, hi
You're
guys.
preaching.
Yeah, like it was like, oh my God,
Pick
like be my friend,
Misha.
pick me, be my friend, be my friend, be my friend, be my friend.
Yes.
And I think it has allowed me to be good at what I do,
But
but I feel like it's also manifested in some negative ways growing up. But yeah, that was my life growing up. Very, very unstable, very, very like meeting different people all the time. But I guess in my adult years, those skills are so good because now I can just come and meet somebody and just warm quickly.
yes.
I'm
Yes.
someone that if I speak to you for 5 minutes, you feel like you've known me for a
Yes,
lifetime.
and you like me.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really stemmed from those bases.
You know what's so interesting about this thing you just said? This pick me things. You know when you're a black girl
Yeah.
in a very white space, or you're living in London. First of all, you have Nigerian. Your background is Nigerian. You're very black, so you have to fit in. Like there's just so much pressure on you to fit in.
Yeah.
How did that affect you as a child? Because you know what other children would have gotten different. The level of acceptance other children would have gotten just because they were children. You probably have to work for yours.
Yeah. I really did feel like I had to work for my friendships.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there was a sense of like there was a sense of fear to be alone growing up.
Yeah.
I wanted to have friends and I wanted to
Be included.
be included. I think there was two things I struggled with. One, moving around a lot, and two, the fact that I wasn't as wealthy. I didn't realize that I was in poverty. I didn't realize growing up I was broke.
Stop.
And I think
Give me
on,
context of this brokenness. Like,
so I remember earlier when I realized I had a lot less than I thought I did. And I was in a playground one time and there was a light-skinned girl that came up to me. And I remember the Nintendo Wii's just came out. So maybe this was like 2006,
right.
2007. Nintendo's Wii just came out and everyone copped a Nintendo Wii. It was like the household thing, you play your tennis and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember a girl coming to me and she was like, oh yeah, did you get the Nintendo Wii? And I was like, nah. And she was like, oh, like she was like quite surprised. Like, how do you have a Nintendo Wii? She goes, oh, what do you like play any games? And I was like,
Not really.
not really, no. She was like, do you have any toys? And I was like, we have a like family computer. Like I promise you, I see my niece and she is flooded with dolls and she has a little house there and a car here. I honestly did not grow up with any toys. And to me, that was normal. And until this girl said that to me, where she was like, so you don't have any toys? And I said, nah. And she goes, so what do you have? I said, I have a computer. We just played the computer.
There's Sudoku inside.
There's Sudoku. There's card game. Like that's all I knew.
You thought that was enough as a child.
I thought that was enough. And I think the way she looked at me, I kind of realized that. I think that is the moment I realized that my life was not as normal as a normal. How old was I? Maybe 8-year-old or 9-year-old, understanding the concept of I have less than what the normal person has, and I feel like with those two things, it was like the one of being liked, but not fitting into what people thought was cool. And I think I really battled with that growing up because I wanted to be liked, but I don't feel like I had the means to be liked. So it even enforced this personality more of be as loud as possible. Maybe they'll ignore the fact that your shoe is opening or the fact that your skirt is the pleats in your skirt have been ironed out. And it was just, I think that is kind of my training grounds for my personality. Yeah.
Tell me about the relationship you have with your mom.
Do you know what? Vulnerable. I don't think I've ever spoken about this. So growing up, I would say I was the black sheep. I definitely, I grew up with there was 5 of us, but I think out of everyone, I think I probably had the most difficult relationship um with my mother, because I feel like res- the way I responded through my trauma was not the way in which somebody would feel sorry for you. So I feel like when you see a child and they're sad about something, you can sympathize with that.
Yeah.
They're sad, or they might withdraw.
Yeah.
But I was the person that I would be very angry. I was a very angry child. And I had a lot of outbursts. I didn't know how
Yeah.
to control my
Yeah.
emotions. And I think it was very difficult for people to sympathize with me, or to paint me, to not paint me anything other than
Because
she's
you
a
appeared
troublesome
badly
child. I
behaved.
was badly behaved. I'm a
Right.
troublesome child.
Yeah.
I also in later years was diagnosed with ADHD, which I didn't know I had as a child,
Right.
because
Right.
mental health is something that the Black community just pretend it doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, my relationship with my mum was very, very rocky.
Mhm.
And I think after a while I became very, very rebellious. Very rebellious. I would just do what I want. And I didn't feel like my mum, or to be honest, my family really liked me.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, fuck everyone then. I'm gonna do my own thing. And it was like that for many, many, many years.
Would you say that they didn't like you, or it was you just were misunderstood?
I definitely feel like I was misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I definitely feel like I was the scapegoat for a lot of things. I think when it comes to African parents, it's very easy to blame. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I was it was easier for me to blame because of how I acted,
Yeah.
rather than having a bit of self-reflection to be like, maybe in this situation I'm wrong. It's always the child's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
always the child's fault in those type of
Yeah.
households. So I think that was something that I was the scapegoat for
Yeah.
when things go wrong, or where there was a problem, or where
Mm-hmm.
there was an issue. It
Yeah.
was Joyce Ann, Joyce Ann. Even
Yes.
if it wasn't me, it's Joyce Ann. Even if I wasn't there, still Joyce Ann. It's interesting because my little sister, sorry, I have to snitch on you because it's hilarious.
Mm.
My little sister was, bear in mind, I don't live at home anymore.
Right.
I don't live at home anymore.
Right.
And my mum found a vape in my sister's
But
drawer.
yeah.
And the first thing my mum said was,
They just
is this what you and Joyce are doing in London? Is this what you're doing in London?
Very African, very
So
Nigerian.
that just kind of shows you that, like, anything
Yeah.
that, even if my
Mm.
little sister did something bad, for
Yeah.
some way or
Yeah.
reason, I'm the cause of it, or I'm the
Yeah.
reason for
Yeah.
it. But again, as I'm growing up, me and my mum are definitely in a better place. I think definitely moving out
Mm.
was something that was very, very helpful to our relationship. But yeah, when I was younger, it was pretty bad.
Do you know some of the things that we dealt with as children? I mean, we didn't have words for it. Now that I'm older, I realize that we went through a lot of trauma, a lot of things that made us very either recluse or had to do extra to be liked and loved. And you don't know how much that affects you as an adult.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just beginning to unpack some of the things that happened to me as a child. That time in your life did it inform the person that you are now in terms of, like, even the way you engage the world? Are you more trusting? Are you more open, or is it always a front? Because you can put up a front to get by.
Yeah.
You can process a trauma differently, but people don't really understand that there's something underneath that. It's like you and your mom having issues, but the only reason why you were having issues with her was because you didn't feel like you were loved and you were understood. But to her, it's like, what kind of child is this one?
Yeah.
You know how that dynamic, how did it play into your teenage years, your adulthood?
I feel like because me and my mum didn't have a good relationship, one.
Yeah.
Two, I grew up in a place where I didn't have much. I think it really kicked in the hustler in me. I think I became very hyper independent because I didn't feel like I could rely on the people in my household. I could rely on everyone around me who are supposed to be my caregivers.
Yeah.
It instilled this DIY
Do it on your own.
mentality that I
Grew
still
up so
carry today. I
fast.
grew up very fast. I had to hustle. I've always been a hustler because I realized, going back to what we were talking about the childhood acceptance, for you to be accepted, you need to have certain things. And for you to have certain things, you need to have money. So knowing that, I've then been this young girl who always wanted more for herself. So even it's so funny because I love all my friends, but my friends are very much princesses, and I'm in my princess era now. Took me a long time, but I had this hyper independence where it's like I don't need anyone. I can do it myself. If I want to drill, I will drill. If I want to carry TV, I'll carry TV. Like, and again, because I didn't grow up with my dad, I learned a lot of skills that some of the girls don't really need to learn. You know, like fixing toilets and putting IKEA together and carrying this out of the. I've got to show me if you see I do it. I'm carrying wardrobe. Strong woman. Like all those stuff really came from those moments. I think that's something that I carried into my adult years, which on one side it's amazing to be independent, but I think when it came to things like relationships, it then became difficult to then
be vulnerable.
Be vulnerable. That's it.
Joyce,
to then
I
trust,
understand
to then
you, my love.
To then be like, I can trust you with a part of me.
Do you know what? And I think I struggle with that as well. You know when you've been so independent for so long, you figured out things by yourself. You know, and when you've done things to survive, like let me give you context, right? I thought that, by working so hard and achieving stuff, I would not be okay and fit for the people that I love to accept me.
Oof.
But it just never happens. Like you keep doing things and earning and you just become so exhausted. But then again, it doesn't fix the fact that, this trauma is there.
Yeah.
How much of that fall pushed you into like success and adulthood?
What's the question?
So
how
like
much?
How much of that fuel, like the fuel, right? You know when you're running on bad fuel, right?
Yeah.
So basically, the only reason why you're working this hard is because of the lack of acceptance back at home. The only reason why you want to do things for yourself and be very independent, even though you need help, is because you're not sure that somebody will lend help to you. So you become a different person. You're not, even with relationships, you don't even know how to let a nigga be a nigga around you.
Yeah.
You are so masculine.
Yeah.
It probably turns him off.
Yeah, true.
How's that dynamic for you?
You mean in relationships with guys?
With guys, with everybody.
I feel like in terms of me, and there's a lot of things I had to unlearn.
Yes.
So I feel like in terms of the hyper masculinity, not allowing a man to be a man. I think once I started manifesting into my relationships and those relationships weren't working out, or the men I was attracting were very feminine.
Is it?
Feminine in the
like
sense
me?
No, not like you, not like you, but not like you, but in the sense of like how they treat you or their behaviors in terms of chivalry, how they look after you. All these 50-50 boys, I think that's very feminine energy for me.
Yeah.
Men feeling like they're the prize, I feel like that's very feminine energy for me. Attracting men like that, I started to realize that there was an issue here. When guys are calling me boss lady, I started feeling there's an issue here. There's an issue here. There's an issue here. There's an issue here. When guys start calling me sugar mommy, there's an issue here.
When they do that, it means that they've moved all the masculinity to you.
Yeah. When a guy's calling me my sugar mommy, there's an issue here. There's a problem here. I'm exerting something that I don't want to exert.
That, right?
No, I'm listen, I'm a motherfucking princess. Look after me.
But do you know what I probably think was happening, right?
Yeah.
In your head, you probably thought that you were being a princess. But because of your default, right?
Yeah.
Your default setting is, I've got this together. So they perceived you as masculine.
And especially when I feel like I cannot trust the person, my default setting is to control it. My default setting is, I don't need you. I could do it anyways. Like,
Fuck
so,
off.
and that could be, and especially when you're in a relationship, those stuff there's a process. That there's generally a process before you start to see a guy in his fullest potential, an emotional process. And I felt like sometimes I didn't even give it opportunity. The minute I saw one little thing, and it could be very, very minute, or I can't pick you up.
You're just
today.
triggered.
I'm just triggered to be like, okay, cool, like bye. That's me. And I started to realize how toxic and how dangerous that was for me as a woman, because I do want to be looked after and I do want to be babied and I can be very submissive to the right guy, but I was pushing those men away. Yeah.
Well, one thing I can tell you for free is that Nigerian men are the most masculine, so you're welcome to move back and find the Nigerian
I'm
husband.
so ready. I'm honestly so, like, I've been asking myself this question. And is it that I am too masculine, or the men that I'm around are not masculine enough?
Yeah.
Because I have dated men that even in my nature like this, they have stepped me down. Like, they have said, they have shown me, nah, I am a man. And I ain't about to have all this shit.
Yes.
And
yes.
it just makes it just like, okay, like,
I feel like it's a
alright,
toxic,
like,
it's a toxic response. Let me tell you what I think this is, right?
go on.
You know what I think? Where I have a few friends who say, if the man is not bossing me around, if it's, you know that thing where you say, babe, come here. What the fuck is this?
Yes, daddy.
I know it's a
Yes,
trauma
daddy.
response. Okay, but
Yes,
I hear you though. Because that means you do well with Nigerian men. Igbo men, mostly. Sorry to my Igbo brothers, but you know, I have most of them as friends and they like a bit of control.
I love it.
It's not to put you in it. It's not to demean you, it's not to bring you down. It's just a thing where they like to be in control. So you would do well with
I
Igbo.
love it.
And then you're Yoruba girl.
I am a woman, and I'm blessed enough to be in this time in my life where everything is centered around me.
Yeah.
My whole job, my team, everyone moves when I move.
Yeah.
So I would love to be in a relationship
With a nigga that's like,
with a guy that's just
it's like Joyce, where you don't shoot it.
yeah, like Amadan should come here.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm
daddy,
picking you up.
I'm on my motherfucking way. I'm on my motherfucking way. Where's the cab? Where's the cab? I'm coming.
Nigerian men don't do that.
Where's
They
the
pick you
car?
up.
Where's the car?
Yeah.
I'm coming, and I'm coming. So
Oh, Joyce, please, this podcast it's a Jesus podcast, please. No, but I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about how you got into the media, right?
Okay.
So now I know a bit of your background and things that informed this, Joyce, but like, what informed the decision to be a media personality? Especially with the background that you've had, like it could have been anything. You could have probably said, you know what, to save my family from what our reality was, let me look for a job that's going to pay me this amount of pounds in the month and not take a risk to be a media personality.
Yeah. I feel like I've always loved creative. That's the first thing. When I was in college, I did acting. And I did level 3 acting, and it was fantastic. I love script writing, I love directing, I love creating. I love the process of something being in your head and the process of manifesting it into real life.
Yeah.
It's the most amazing thing to me.
It's like a god. It's like a god. You're birthing something.
That is the most prolific element of God. He is a creator, something that became the mens rea, the mental, and then turns into the physical. That is something that I love. So I've always loved creativity. I started doing acting. Didn't like the lack of control I had with acting because you're waiting on somebody else's yes and no. Going back to childhood trauma, I'm a control freak. Doesn't happen. Doesn't work well. Didn't work well with me. I said, I can't fathom spending hours and hours and hours on a monologue and working my ass off for it for somebody to tell me no. It just didn't make sense to me. So funny enough, speaking of Jesus, I was in such a bad place, and I feel like my spirituality was so, even though I was in a bad place physically, my spirituality was as elevated as it has ever been. I was praying every day. I was really in the space and the presence of God. And I was very suicidal at this time. I had no money.
How old were you then?
Oh God, this was like what, 3-4 years ago now, maybe coming up to 4 years.
Right.
Very suicidal. Didn't feel like I had a purpose in life. Didn't know what I was doing, but I couldn't. Like, it's so weird because I always feel like destiny leaves clues, especially for people like me who they were so confused. I was so confused to what I wanted to do. But I remember I was crying to God and I was like, God, there's something innate and I can't put my finger on it that I just like talking to people. And I knew that the job I had that I'd wake up happy doing would be involving speaking to people because I just love talking to people. But I thought maybe it'd be psychology or it'd be something along those lines. So I remember one time I was sitting in bed and I'll never forget it. And I always tell this story because it is the most beautiful beginning. And I remember lying in bed one day in a house that I was in like £2,000 debt in, and the landlord was sending me texts every day, that bitch. And I remember just being just present. Just I can't remember what I was doing. Was I watching something? And I remember hearing the Spirit. I remember the Holy Spirit telling me to start a podcast. And it literally, it was, and I know it was from God, because I never thought of starting a podcast. Maybe 2 years beforehand, like 2 years before, when I was in
Same
uni.
here.
And I was like, a podcast. And I never listened to podcasts either. So he was like, start a podcast. And I was like, God, a podcast. I was like, that's interesting. I just said, that's interesting. And, at this point, me and God were talking. We were talking. That was my guy. We were chatting. And he was like, start a podcast. And I was like, so, okay, let me just see what is going on here. I was Googling, and I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I didn't think of it as anything, in terms of, I didn't think that I was going to start it and it was going to change my life. I saw it as a passion project between me and God. So I remember sitting there thinking, okay, God, let's do it, because obviously I've got no job. I'm jobless. I'm on universal credit. I'm £2,000 in debt. What the fuck? What's the worst that can happen? So I remember opening the Word document. I was like, okay, God, let's do this. What are we gonna call? Like, it was almost like me and God were going back. What are we gonna call it? What's it gonna look like? What's the venue? And it's weird. I was stuck on the name for time. And for any creator who is in Christ, or anyone who's spiritual, like, God is the number one creator. He's the one that's everything that has been
that's come into
existence comes from him. So in that sense, I was going backwards and forwards just to be like, what should we call it? What's the color scheme? What's the pattern? We were going backwards and forwards. What's the pattern? What's the logo gonna look like? What's the show gonna be about? What's this? And every step of the way, God was talking back to me. Okay, I think we should do this. I think we should do. It was like this. It was like this innate feeling of do this.
And there's so much ease when you're listening, when you're paying attention.
When I was paying attention, he came up with the name. I didn't know what I was gonna call it, Auntie Diaries or something stupid like that. And I was like, and I remember I said, God, I don't know what to call this, and I really like you to help me on this, because obviously your idea is better than mine. So let's. And he said to me, he said, how do you want people to feel when you watch it? And I was like, I want them to feel like we're having a good time and we're having fun. And I was playing on that. And I was like, where are the places that I have the most fun with my friends? And I was like, in a brunch, sipping on some mimosas, having a chinny, or going to one of my girls' house and ordering a takeaway and having a good time. And that's where the name Cocktails and Takeaways came from. It was the feeling of those places that I wanted to bring into that room. And it really was God that navigated that for me. Yeah. So, started the podcast. Didn't have any money to start it. I was getting like £300 a month off universal credit. My studio was £100 a week, and I used £100 to pay for the studio.
because you also trusted that, if God gave you this idea, you'd be able to execute it regardless.
I just thought, do you know what? I just really wanted to put something. Remember, I said my whole thing is creation. My whole thing is something, building something.
Yeah.
And I think that element, I didn't necessarily feel like it was going to last long, but it was just the idea of me building something and it manifesting that excited me. So yeah, I started the podcast, and then from there, it just took off from the jump.
Did you have visuals from the jump? Or
I had visuals from the jump. Like I knew I wanted visuals for the jump. I think not many people were doing 2-pan cameras.
Yeah.
Everybody had a wide pan.
Yeah.
And I said no, because I want to catch people's reaction. So I was one of the first people to have a 2-pan camera doing podcasts, because nobody was focusing on visuals.
Yeah.
But I was like, I want this to be like a show. It's very weird, because I feel like any creator has the possibility of matching people who have a Netflix or a BBC or a ITV. And that's how I've always designed my stuff. Even with the budget I had, I said, when people look at the show, I want them to think, who is backing this?
Yes.
Who is sponsoring this episode today? And that was very important to me. So yeah, that's how the show started.
Tell me how people received the first episode.
Do you know what's so interesting? And it goes back to um people chasing perfection when they first start something. One of my mics weren't working on my first episode. My guest mic was not working, so we had to use the camera mic. It was completely off the whole episode. And the fact that that is the episode one is hilarious, because anyone else would be like, fucking no, I'm not putting it
Yeah,
out. But I put
yeah.
it out. I put it out. I was like, there is nothing stopping me from putting out this episode. And it was important to me because I feel like it allowed me to see growth from having no mic in one, to the camera shaking, to sometimes our camera, the power in the cameras would pop out
Mm.
because the room was so small. Somebody kick a table, that camera's popping out, and it's not
Wow.
it's not running. It's
I,
not ru-
and you have no idea.
I have no
You're
idea
talking.
because I don't. At this point, I didn't have a team. The team couldn't fit into the room. The room was like this. It's like a box.
Yeah, yeah.
So if somebody kicked a camera, that's it. That's the whole episode done. So we'd have times where it'd just be me or just be my guest.
So you would sit down, but you set up before you sit down.
Yeah, they'd set up before I sit down. They fuck off. They fuck off. Yeah, and it'd just be us and hoping for the best.
But you know what's so interesting in that time? Because I'm also a podcaster. You know that time where you're doing something, you don't know where the end is gonna, like, you don't know what the end is gonna be. You don't even know what the middle is gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have a serious hunch that, if I can push, something might just happen.
Mm-hmm.
And as with my podcast, I didn't realize that I wanted a podcast. I didn't want a podcast.
Yeah.
I was in a very tough place with myself. Um, I had just left a movie set that probably drained the life out of me. I was feeling so small. My self-esteem was in the mud. But I'm just like, God, you have to give me something that's mine, that would not make me be at the mercy of people. Control,
Yeah.
trauma, as you said. So the place where being on that movie set just reminded me how inadequate I was.
Mm.
So I just really wanted something. So I prayed, and I'd heard that I should start a TV show. I wanted a TV show because
Same.
I wanted a TV show because I didn't know what a podcast was. Because I
Yeah.
was a podcast,
Yeah.
and I met things happened. I met Sheyi. The podcast started, but even when it started, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just wanted to speak to people that came on, and 10 episodes in, Lipton comes as a sponsor.
Period.
And I got Sheyi, they whine me. It's just so amazing that when you listen to God and you move according to what He's saying, like, there's so much ease, and that's
Yeah.
what I get from your conversation.
And when you move when it's for you and you listen, it moves like this.
Yes.
Because I couldn't believe my life. Like you just said, 10 episodes. There's some people who have been waiting for
They're in their third
sponsorship
season.
since 3 seasons in. They're still.
Yeah.
I feel like when you listen to God, even in a place of fear, because it's like starting a podcast is hard.
Yeah.
Especially, let's not talk about solo podcasts that all the money that you're spending, you're not splitting it between 3 ways.
Yeah.
Every financial decision is based on you and your pocket.
Yeah.
Ask my lots of how many times I've borrowed. When I first started, how many times I've borrowed money just to film. Like it was hard starting, but for some reason, there's this innateness in you that's like, I have to keep going. I have to, like, there's something about this that's great. And I think from that obedience of listening is when God just took it, like the speed of which the show grew, I couldn't believe
When
it.
did things change? So
God.
when did you get to the point where you realize that, oh, Father Lord, is working. This thing is working on.
I didn't process it for a long time. I'll tell you when. I'll tell you the story that I processed it. There is there's a pastor called Pastor Toby Ayoromi. He's a pastor, he's a twin, and he's based in the UK. And when I was in my worst times, I told you I was suicidal, I was leaning on God. I used to watch his show, his church program every Sunday, because he was in lockdown, so churches weren't running. So I remember watching him and everything that he was saying about spiritual, like a God and the power that we have in God, and the ability to create the life we want through obedience and through getting to know God and tapping into him. Those were the things that I was applying into that point in my life. So when I started the podcast, it was taking off. Simultaneously, I was also doing like personality stuff. So I was working with BuzzFeed and uni days, and I was doing Word on the Curb and being, the funny girl out of the show. Now, I can't remember where I was at this time, but when life is moving so fast,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really process
The growth.
the growth. And I was
Yeah.
just like, okay, thank you. God is great. Thank you. God is great. Keep it moving. What's next? What's next? What's next? And I didn't realize how far I've come until I had gone to another church. I'm in another church, and that pastor was a
Guest
guest
preacher.
speaker, and it's the first time I've actually seen him face to face, because before that I was watching him on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching him, and I remember sitting in the church, and it was like I was watching myself at the time that I was watching him, and then looking at myself now thinking, fam, I'm in a different place. And I remember I went up to him at the service, and I was like, sir, you don't know who I am, but I just want to say that you changed my life. And I cried for 20 minutes straight. I sat on the church altar, and I was like,
I know that.
I
I
cried.
know.
And that was the moment that I deeped life was different for me. I cried that day, because watching him was like, I actually remember where I came from now. I remember how I started. I remember how I was feeling. I remember what I was going through at that time. And then watching him now in the present and where life was, that realization just slapped me to
Mhm.
bumper clat. And I cried
Mhm.
and cried and cried. But it was a beautiful and very memorable moment.
So tell me from the time that the show became a thing, when it became viral, what happened after? Because it's one thing for you to climb, but to maintain that, because you've done the first season now.
Yeah.
You're like, God, how are we going to do second season? How would it remain relevant? There's
Yeah.
so many things that you're actually thinking about. But tell me about the smooth sail. Or has there ever been a smooth sail with the podcast?
I think the show's always been chaotic, but I think that's the beauty of the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like with the show, that's a good question. I feel like the show's always growing,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like we always have amazing conversations. I think one thing that people want to see is their favorite people at their most vulnerable, and not necessarily at the most vulnerable where we're talking about the things we're
Yeah.
talking about, but at the moment where it's not so media trained and it's not so
Yeah.
polished. I
Yeah.
think the fact that the show is so unpolished is why people keep coming back,
Yeah.
because it's like, we want to get to know this person for who they are,
Yeah.
not the glossy flossy thing that they
Yeah.
bring on
Yeah.
the on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And we know Joyce can bring that out of them.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that is why people keep coming back. Also, my personal brand was growing as well. So it's like they were working simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
The show was growing, I was growing,
Mm-hmm.
I was growing, the show was growing. So if people had seen me from something I'd done with Channel 4 or ITV2, they'd be like, oh, we want to know more about her. And then they'd go into the show. Or
Mm.
people were on the show because if people came from the show because maybe their favorite is on there, or there's a topic that they found enlightening, then they'll be like, okay, cool, who's this Madame Joyce
Mm-hmm.
girl? She's cool, let's move on. So
Mm-hmm.
I think both of them were working hand in hand in
Mm.
growth.
I'm so interested in this conversation. Tell me how the show solidified you as a media personality. Because it's one thing for you to start a show. There are a lot of podcasters who are not as popular,
Yeah.
who will not convert into mainstream media
Mhm.
or digital media like you did. Tell me about that process, and and it's probably something that you've been praying for, right? To be able to penetrate into that space,
Yeah.
right? And the show did that for you, because I've seen work that you've done for a lot of brands. I see your Instagram. You're a working girl, right? So tell me about that process.
Oh yeah. So I think from the beginning, I've always wanted to do personality stuff,
Yeah.
in terms of I wanted to do shoots, and I
Mm.
wanted to just come out and be myself and perform, or maybe be asked about things. And I think there are so many amazing people like that. Nella Rose is someone big in our community. Grace Aguilera is someone that I've grown up watching and just seen women on camera be themselves and be lit and cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved that. So I think I used my show as a case study for my personality. And there was loads of brands that I wanted to work with. At the time, BuzzFeed was one of them. Word on the Curb was one of them. And I was growing my TikToks and my social medias of the podcast, and I was showing them, and I was then finding emails and emailing people like, oh my God, like, my name is Joyce, I'm a podcast host, I have X amount of following, I would love to be on your platforms and just, be myself, can we work? And I think the first person that took me in was Word on the Curb. So I did a shoot with Word on the Curb. It went viral. It went really well. And then from there, I used that as a case study for BuzzFeed.
Yeah.
So then I started working with BuzzFeed. That's how I met Victor Kunda, who is now one of my bestest friends.
I love his content.
Yeah, every time I did something, before I had management, I'd outreach to the next person and be like, I've done this for this. And then that's how the domino effect came.
That's amazing. What kind of, did you face backlash or, what's the word I'm trying to look for? Or pushback for being, first of all, a Black woman in the UK, Nigerian, and not very, like, when I see you, it doesn't give me, I'm trying to be British. It gives me like, I'm a Nigerian girl who was born here, but I'm going to be me. That sometimes can hinder the process of growth, especially in that space.
Yeah.
Have you been able to navigate that?
You know what's interesting? And I actually miss Joyce when she first started because I really didn't give a fuck. I really, really didn't give a fuck. When I first started and I was coming on, I was like, you better that. And I just would say whatever. And people would be in my comments like, you dumb bitch. Really? You dumb, you're so ugly. I proper didn't give a fuck, Like, when I mean zero fuck, I just see it and it wouldn't even move me. I think the bigger I got, the more bothered I started becoming.
Yes.
So back in the day when I first started, when honestly, because I constantly was getting attacked, and it was usually because of the boys, because we talk about guys having no money, and what girlies, what the girlies talk about, what the girlies get up to in the kitchen. We talk about that stuff, and I think it was one of the first times it was being put on the internet, and guys didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't know how to deal with it. And they were attacking, bah, you dumb bitch, you this. And it literally went over my head.
How? Why?
I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, I just feel like I feel like maybe I was a lot more secure in myself and insecure in what I was saying. And a little bit more audacious when I first started. Because I didn't have so much to lose then. I was broke. I was coming up. What's the worst that can happen?
Yes.
What's the worst that can happen? So I think when I first started, I was a lot more audacious with the things that I used to say and the things I used to do, as a matter of fact.
But as you grow, right, it feels like this career that I've created, this career that I've gotten to this point, I don't want to lose it by saying something off.
Yeah. You feel a lot more muzzled.
Yes.
And that's the worst thing you can feel as a podcaster, because people know you to speak.
Right.
But if you can't speak to your fullest capability, then who are you?
As authentic as you are when you started.
Authenticity. I feel like the hardest thing for me was to keep maintaining authenticity. Yeah. Because as you get more along this game and you get bigger, you start questioning yourself. Am I enough?